Gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's April the 5th, 2023. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined once again by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. And Matt, we're back on football, man. I mean, there's a little bit of basketball news I'll talk about later on, but we are all about football right now at CaneSport.com with spring practice in its third week of 4. Next week, they'll have, I guess, one hard practice on Tuesday. Then they'll have a walkthrough practice on Thursday for the spring game on Friday night. So they're getting to the end of this spring practice thing, and I'd like to sit here and report all kinds of crazy progress, I guess would be the word. And I think they are moving in the right direction. All the reports that I'm getting from people who are watching entire workouts are that the team looks better in certain spots. But I think there's also a reality that we will be talking about in the coming months as we head into the 2023 season. And that is, I'm not sure yet that there's a ton of elite talent on this roster. Elite talent is the only thing that is going to allow you to win at Miami the way people want you to win. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But on a real positive note, Matt, James Williams was back at practice today, and it was nice to see him running around with Lance Guidry, who's working with the safeties, because I think it's really important that Lance Guidry get a good look at James Williams and get a feel for exactly what James can do so that when he's scheming things up here during the offseason, he can properly use James, which is not an easy task, in my opinion. I still question whether James Williams is a pure safety or whether he would be best suited as an outside linebacker. But they've got other guys, Wesley Bassane, Jay Smith, that are trying to be in the mix at outside linebacker. You got Corey Flagg working at multiple spots. I think the universally considered best linebacker in spring practice has been Francisco Mayagoa. They're calling him Kiko. Has really wowed people here in the first couple weeks of spring practice. But Matt, let's start with James Williams. Your thoughts on seeing James back out on the practice field?
Isn't it amazing that a guy who was okay at Washington State, not great, is 4 months later the best linebacker on the field? I mean, thank goodness. Thank goodness for the progress, for the remarkable progress of Francisco Mauigoa in 4 months in Miami's program. James Williams.
Well, let me qualify it real quick. He was one of the best inside linebackers in the Pac-12 last year. Let's be honest. So, it's not a great surprise when you consider where Miami was at.
He was good. I mean, he was a good linebacker. He wasn't great. He was a good linebacker. Here, he's great. So that's fantastic news. James Williams, overshadowed what to me was really the story of the amazing 4 periods we were able to watch yesterday before we were unceremoniously kicked off the field. And okay, you want to show this first? Fine. But so James Williams was back at practice. Wonderful. But the real story, and they're showing it right there, is Cam Kinchens was the real story, because in period 2 or 3, he was practicing with his left ankle taped up, and you don't think much of it because all these guys have little nicks and bruises at this time of year. This is whatever it is, the 9th practice, maybe. I think it is spring practice. And they just came off a scrimmage. So there was, for instance, 4 receivers were in red limited jerseys. You see James Williams right there in a red limited jersey, which basically means they can just do some individual work. They're not going to be doing team drills. Cam Kinchens, goes down during period 3 and has to have his ankle retaped, and then, tries to sort of run it off. He's limping, doesn't look, you see him right there, limping, right? Number 5, limping, going down right there, right? He can barely walk. The guy refuses to leave the field. Okay, I've seen guys leave the field to go to the restroom and never come back. Okay, Cam Kinchens can't walk. His ankle's killing him. He has a trainer, literally, he doesn't go to the training room to have it retaped. Just tell some dude, bring the tape right here, right now, and just retape it. I'm not missing my drill. If there's a leader by example on this field He's it. And Miami coaches should point to that part of the video right there for those of you that didn't see the slow motion of him basically unable to stand and just trying to essentially get himself back where he could just practice in a, you could call it a meaningful practice, but it's not. It's a meaningless practice for a guy like Cam Kinchins, okay? He already knows what he's supposed to be doing. Even in the defense. I mean, this is a guy who studies nonstop. If every guy was like that, if every guy had that desire to just practice, not play a game, practice, right? Then this team would have all the culture you want. As a matter of fact, they'd be complaining about too much culture. Mario Crystal would be saying, these guys are working too hard. We need to get them on vacation. I'm worried they're going to burn out. When Mario Cristobal says that, then you have a bunch of Cam Kinchins on the team, because I was like, somebody please help Cam Kinchins. Let him rest. Why is he still out here? Just let him go relax in the hot tub, And, to me, that was the story of the practice, because it was so nice to see that, because I haven't seen that in years. I'm trying to remember the last time I saw a guy just barely getting through practice and just willing himself when his body tells him, is screaming, no, get me to the country club. And he says, no, I'm staying on this field with my guys. I can't remember that happening in a long time. So that was wonderful to see. And unfortunately for Cam Kinchins, James Williams' return is all anyone talked about afterwards, because James Williams is back and he can't do anything because he's in a red jersey. But that's the big story. He's back.
Well, he was back wearing red. And unfortunately, there were a lot of guys out there wearing red at practice yesterday. This is not a healthy football team right now. It's got to be limiting the progress that they can make in spring practice. You look just at the receiver position, and sitting there in red jerseys were Colby Young, Frank Ladson, Mike Redding, and Robbie Washington. That's four guys that I think you would want to be contributors in September. A little bit light in that regard, but it's letting Jacoby George and Restrepo and even Isaiah Horton kind of stand out a little bit in receiver drills. And Matt, as we get here, we're getting towards the end of spring practice. I'm still not convinced that these coaches won't be looking for a number one receiver in the portal in May if they can find it.
They need to. Look, a couple of guys who this is concerning to me, because Jaleel Skinner still has had some problems with his hands. Ray Joseph has just dropped passes for no apparent reason with no defense on the field at all. And, these are guys, they just got to get on jugs. Drops have been such a problem for this program for years with multiple wide receivers coaches, dating back to the guy who left for FSU, I don't understand why this is happening here, but you've got to have guys that catch the ball, period. You got to have guys like Jacoby George has been so much better as a receiver this spring than what I remember seeing from him last spring and last fall when he was out there. And I'd like everyone to be like that. Everyone should improve. Jacoby George is catching fingertip passes of bulleted balls. He hasn't dropped anything that I've seen. All the other receivers have dropped a pass here or there that I've seen. So, guys have to get to that level. And I take it back. I don't think Xavier Restrepo, I don't remember him dropping anything either. But these guys, just as a unit, they have to be consistent. They have to be good enough where each of them has their niche that they can have a role in. Because like the new offense coordinator, Shannon Awesome, was telling us, he doesn't need a receiver to be good at everything. He just needs to find out one really, really good thing each receiver can do and then have him do that. Because he's good enough to understand that you don't have to just have 2 or 3 starting receivers that are constantly on the field. If you've got a guy who's really good at doing this particular route and you want to run that a few times a game, you put him in for those. There's nothing wrong with that. And if teams catch on, you have them run a few other routes off of that, right? It's not the end of the world to do something somewhat simple. As a matter of fact, I think simple is what this team needs. And from what I've heard, the offense is fairly ahead of the defense, which typically isn't the norm, for championship teams. You usually want the defense to be ahead of the offense, but in this case, you got a lot of missing defensive players on the defensive line. James Williams is out. All the cornerbacks are trying to figure out who's going to start. Linebackers new with Mauigoa. Corey Flagg's been hurt. Not hurt, but he's coming off injury. He's been limited. So, there's a lot of question marks on defense. So it's actually a good thing to me that an offense that was pretty bad last year is ahead of the defense right now. The offense has put in almost the entire playbook. The defense has not even put in, I think, not even 60%, 50% of what they want to put in. So that's okay. This spring to me is like the the petri dish experiment you do when you're in junior high school. You go down to the local lake, you put some water in the dish, you look through some microscope looking for amoeba or something like that, and then
What are you talking about?
it's an experiment. This spring's an experiment. It's not a big deal. If the defense isn't so good in the spring, or the offense isn't so good in the spring, or neither side's so good in the spring, it doesn't matter. It's a petri dish. You're just sort of trying to mix stuff together, look at it through a microscope, figure out what's working, figure out which ones are going to stay alive and which ones you have to throw into the portal and put back in the lake. And then by the fall, you have to have an actual living organism that can function and eat other organisms. Because short of that, you're going to have a bad year. So the petri dish so far, I think, is fine. Okay, you've got a few amoeba in there. They're swimming around. They're single-celled organisms. They're asexual, like Gary Ferman. And like eventually, they're going to grow into something bigger and better. And that's what we want to see in the fall. So people who freak out over the spring, who say, oh, who's looking good, who's not looking good, they're not giving us a lot. And even what we hear, some of it we can't report. But I am very optimistic about the amoebas on offense. Not as optimistic about the amoebas on defense. But you know what? They'll keep mixing together the petri dish, and we'll see what happens in the fall, because that's what really matters. Spring is not that big a deal to me.
All right. Well, while you were doing your little rant there, I got a text with a contribution from the Ray Joseph Defense Fund, because you might have seen him drop a ball somewhere along the line here, but he has been one of the standouts of spring practice, and he's making a lot of plays.
Yeah, no, he's made big plays in the scrimmages and et cetera, but he's dropping passes. And guess what? Coaches don't trust guys that drop passes, even if they make big plays. That he's got to get more consistent, because he's that good. They need him on the field, but if he's dropping passes, he won't be on the field, and they need him there. That's what I was trying to say.
Well, he's a true freshman. He's not going to do everything perfect. I feel fairly comfortable saying he is going to be on the field. And
he needs to be.
He is a guy that they have to get the ball to in the fall. Just a different level athlete than what they've been playing with. And, that is what can make the difference between winning 5 games and winning 7 or 8 games. It's just some higher level athletes. Now, what is reality going to be in September, October, November? Is it going to be more than that 7, 8 games this year? How far along is the roster going to be? I think that remains to be seen. I mean, I think you might still get some more fortifications in May. We'll see what happens. But, Ray Joseph, I feel pretty comfortable is going to make a decent contribution to this team. So in a story that's on the website from yesterday's practice, we do outline what we perceive as the current depth chart, pretty much as we've been talking about all spring, with Jalen Rivers, Javion Cohen, Matt Lee, Inez Cooper, Francis Mayagoa, as started on the O-line.
It's not what we perceive. It's not what we perceive.
Why are you interrupting me?
Because you're already wrong. It's not what we perceive. That's what they did. Like, I just looked and wrote it down. That's the offensive depth chart.
But I'm just saying, it's not. There weren't a lot of surprises on offense. Okay,
sorry. Continue. Continue running off your list of games.
That was the point I was trying to make before I was interrupted. On second team offense, Ja'Cory Brown is running with the second team. Don Chaney is the second team running back right now behind Henry Parrish. Jaleel Skinner, the second team tight end behind Cam McCormick, and a pretty rough looking second team offensive line once you get past the left tackle Samson Okanola, who has been making very, very good strides here in spring practice. He struggled a little bit in the early days of spring. I'm told he is taking gargantuan leaps every single practice and continuing to get better and better. But I don't feel good about what else I see at the O-line position. The rest of the second team, Lawrence Seymour, Ryan Rodriguez, Logan Sekapolu, Chris Washington, not great in my opinion. Miami still needs a lot of help on the O-line. There's no doubt about it. Defense was a little bit trickier for us to determine. But we did get a chance to speak to Devontae Brown and Daryl Porter after yesterday's practice, and they are running with the first team at the cornerback position, along with Corey Couch, who slides in there in the slot. So, and then linebacker, obviously, we talked about Francisco Mayagoa. He is definitely going to be a clear starter. The other spots are a little more up in the air. Corey Flagg, Keontra Smith will be in the running there. Wesley Basaint, obviously, and Chase Smith. So those are 4 guys that'll be in the mix for, 1 or 2 other starting spots, depending on what defense they are running. All right. So other stories on the website today. Well, let me talk, before we talk recruiting, let me talk basketball for a minute. We've been talking about how they can make themselves better. The early polls are starting to come out for next year. Miami is universally being considered a top 10 team going into next year, which is what we've expected. That doesn't mean that they can't make this roster better. And so Favor Air, the freshman center, he went into the portal yesterday, which I thought was a really good thing, because they've got a freshman kid coming in by the name of Michael Nwoku, who I think is immediately would have been ahead of Favor Air in terms of ability. So that allows them to not just add him, but maybe it frees up a spot to go into the portal and get a big guy. And I think there'll be more roster movement. I think Harlan Beverly is 50-50 to stick. A couple other young guys might decide to take a look at a different destination. It's not really Jim Laranaga's style to tell somebody to do that. Mario Cristobal has no problem doing that. I don't know that Jim Laranaga will do that. There are a couple kids that it might be in their best interest to go play elsewhere. So we'll see what happens there, and what direction recruiting is going to go here for basketball, because these are very, very, very key roster spots that they're working with right here to supplement what they've got coming back. And then, of course, they are waiting to hear whether Isaiah Long is going to make a return to Miami. I think he's in the process of talking that over with his family right now. He'll probably have to assess his NBA draft status. So that's what's going on in basketball. Okay, as we do every morning, we do have some recruiting updates for you guys. We have a story on Daytona Beach, Mainland 2024 defensive lineman LJ McCray. They offered him in February. They've been wanting to get him on campus to just get a feel for him and where they might stand. That happened this past weekend. He updates for us how that went and where things stand with the Hurricanes. Another visitor that we have a story on, Orlando Jones, 2024 4-star defensive lineman, DeAndre Robinson. He has been to Miami twice now in the past month. That's a clear sign that Miami's pushing for him. Another guy to keep an eye on is David Stone from IMG. Miami working really hard on these defensive linemen, trying to load up and start getting some commitments here later in April, May, and June. Okay, it's been a little bit of a slow start to recruiting. Nothing to panic about, but there should be some commitments coming, in these next couple months. Also, a story on the website today on 2024 4-star athlete Amir Jackson. He was at Miami on Tuesday, had a great time, so impressed. He wants to return for an official visit to Coral Gables at some point, probably in the month of June. You can read all about what Amir Jackson was saying off his visit to the U on Tuesday. But beyond that, Matt, it's all about spring practice. The Canes will work again on Thursday. I think that we are going to be able to see a much more extended portion of practice than we've been able to see this thus far this spring. Looking forward to that, so that we can bring you an even more detailed report on spring practice on Thursday. Matt, any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts about spring practice, about football.
Anything?
I did go stone crabbing 2 days ago. It was my final trip. We pulled the traps. We're done for the season. And
Why are you done so early? It's only beginning of April.
because something's going on in the bay, because I've talked to other people too who have some traps out there. Somebody's stealing traps or shrimpers dragging traps. Something weird is going on out there. I mean, we started with normal amount of traps, and we wound up with basically none. So we're like,
People are stealing your traps?
Someone's stealing the traps. So I think our strategy will be, once stone crab season ends, any abandoned traps that are left out there are fair game. So we'll go out there and try to find some traps for next year. Otherwise, we may have to go to Joe's Stone Crabs again, which would be a total disaster.
That would be expensive.
But yeah, but one of the traps we pulled up, it had a really big stone crab in it, but the stone crab had died, I assume of old age. And so my friend is going to bring it to a taxidermist and get it stuffed and mount it on his wall.
Really?
Yeah, like it's a swordfish or something.
So if the stone crab is dead, you can't eat it because it's
no,
rotted
you
out?
don't want to eat it. No, I wouldn't. Anything you find dead, why would you eat it?
I'm saying the claws are no good anymore.
Unless you're a turkey vulture, I highly recommend not eating dead things. Okay. Like straight off.
You're killing it anyway. You're killing the crab. You're ripping its claws off. I mean,
you still not understand? It's a renewable resource, just like Gary Ferman's hair. It grows back. Oh, not like Gary Ferman's hair. In this case, it grows back. It's my hair too. You and I have the same problem, Gary. Okay, it's not just you. Okay, our hair is not a renewable resource. A crab's claws are a renewable resource. Unlike our hair, they grow back their claws, Gary. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that is going to do it for Good Morning CaneSport today. Short and sweet. Hopefully, you guys got a little bit of insight on what's going on out there, and hopefully we'll be able to bring you more here as the week goes forward. If you like this show, like our channel, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button. It does help us with the algorithms at YouTube. If you are not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, please come join our site. Your subscriptions allow us to do what we do every single day. So for Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we'll see you next time, everybody.